Hi there, friends. Welcome to another episode of the No Small Stories podcast. This episode, Shane and I are able to sit down with Michael Beard. Michael is a screenwriter, and his spec scripts have been internationally recognized at film festivals. And he's also a member of the Indie Film Caucus, a part of the Writers Guild of America. And I think we have a really interesting conversation. We touch on a lot of different topics about writing and creativity. I do hope you enjoy. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us again for another episode of the No Small Stories podcast. I am your host, Haleigh, here with my co-host, Shane, and we are joined by Michael Beard today. Michael is a screenwriter whose spec scripts have been recognized by film festivals across the world. In 2022, he officially became a member of the Indie Film Caucus, which is an imprint under the Writers Guild of America, which Shane and I, as writers, would absolutely love to hear more about. So hello, Michael. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
We are so happy to talk to you. So I know that we would want to probably start with the project that's foremost in your mind, the one you're working on, your Moonwalked script, which is focused on Michael Jackson. So can we start with why Michael Jackson as a subject matter?
Well, yeah, thank you for having me. And that's it's a question I've had to kind of figure out myself. Sometimes you don't figure out the intention until it's done, right? But I knew I wanted to tell a story, a very quiet and restrained story about American excess and American wealth. But I didn't want to do, as we mentioned earlier off camera, or whatever, however you want to call it, the highlight reel and all the greatest hits. I wanted to ignore that, and not like I could do it anyway without any estate licensing agreement, but so yeah. And then I found myself, how do I tell this story in a way that really resonates? And then I figured, well, I just, sometimes it strikes like lightning. You can't really put a finger on why you get the idea that you do. But I was like, Michael Jackson, and then I was like, oh, that's perfect, because he is he's as famous as Jesus Christ, and at least in this.
It's a very true thing, isn't it? If you go the world over, people are going to know.
Certainly one of the most famous people to ever exist. And I figured, well, that could be something. And then, and then it took me about 4 months, a lot of research, a lot of interviews, a lot of people telling me, stop calling me. Like, I don't want to talk to you.
So you were actually engaging in research and interviews with people to get, I guess, sorry, pause for a second, because I think I can hear a dog barking.
Okay.
Can anyone else hear that? If we can't, we will move forward.
I mean, it's not. Just don't let it happen again. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, right.
I'm talking with you. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
All right. How am I doing? How is it? Is it coming along all right?
You're great. Yes.
Okay.
Don't overthink it. You're doing great.
All right.
So the research element, like who are you finding, and how are you finding these people to talk to get the real story, I guess you would say?
So, sorry about that. Be that guy.
No, you got to stay hydrated in this world.
Sure.
In the digital age that we live in, you can find anything if you dig hard enough, I guess. So I knew Conrad Murray, and I read his book, This Is It, which is a really insane title to have, because that was the name of Michael's last tour that was never completed because he died, or never started. It was 3 months away. He died in June, or no, it was 1 month away, excuse me. And then his title was This Is It, the story of our relationship and whatnot. So he did a little spin on it. And you have to take it with a grain of salt, but you read his book, I get some names, look them up, get some names, find contact information, reach out. Working in the independent, or in entertainment in general, let's just, for the sake of argument, you have people know, everyone knows everybody to a certain extent. Also, I was very sick about a week ago, still kind of getting over it, and I need to stop smoking. But so
what? When you're a writer, though, I feel like this, coffee and a cigarette sort of comes along with the territory.
Yeah,
I do
feel
the
like,
whole smoke pipes, whiskey, bourbon.
yeah, I'm like, and I'm
That's
dressed like Truman Capote too. You know what I mean? With the cigarettes, that's what he sounds like. But anyway, yeah, and then I just found anything I could, and I don't believe anybody, but I listen, if that makes
That's
sense.
right.
You know, so that's why if you
you're not here to take sides, right? It's a
no, and I'm not
presentation of information in a creative way.
right. And I knew, and one thing I want to like on record point out is that I never did it with the intention of an expose or the intention of a stir up controversy, you know, because that's what this one critic said, that it was whatever. But I feel like it's done in a very respectful and elegant manner, because it is very, and I love this type, you know, observational cinema is what they call it, right?
Okay.
It's when it's the camera is essentially a fly on the wall, and we're just living with these characters.
Right.
So, and I've always wanted to do something like that, but you have to work your way up, you know, creatively and artistically. And then I felt like I was at a place where I could do it. So you'll notice in Moonwalk there is no real driving conflict.
Mm-hmm.
There is no real reason, or you know, what do they call it? What's the fucking film?
Well,
story?
there's not necessarily you know, you don't an overarching like theme that you're going for. You are presenting information. It's almost not a docudrama necessarily.
It goes for, yeah. Well, you know, they say the MacGuffin. You ever hear that term?
Yeah, yep. Alfred
There's
Hitchcock.
nothing.
Yep.
Yes, right. There's none of that, and there all the themes are certainly present of greed, of excess. And for an example, and this I made sure this I really went extra length to achieve this, but every single relationship in the film with all the different characters is transactional. One way or another, it is on payroll.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there is not a single relationship in the film that is pure, except for Michael and his daughter, Paris Jackson, who yeah, I don't want to name drop too much, but so yeah, you know, I tried to express things through things like that. And you know, instead of like big monologues of characters freaking out, there's just like little looks that sit that, but with the context of you know, the scene itself. And plus, it was easier to finally tell a story in an observational sense because it's Michael Jackson, because people actually care.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not just a Michael Beard script; it's a script about Michael Jackson. So right there, it was. And I have never. And if you are a screenwriter watching this, I'm not bragging. I'm just being honest. I have never. This is the most interest I ever had in anything I ever wrote. And I had to sign release forms. Yeah, you know how it is. You got to sign so many different things for anything. And I was signing release forms, NDAs for an unfinished draft. That's why I merged into true story adaptations, because there's built-in marketing without even having a poster, you know? Yeah. So, but yeah, the fact that it is Michael Jackson, I trust the audience to have some knowledge of what the deal is here, you know? So it's not just like some character I invented. Then it would be like, why am I watching this?
Right. So do you at all, I mean, obviously there's controversy surrounding Michael Jackson and his legacy, right? So is that anything that you address, or how would you address it, I guess, is maybe a better question.
Yeah, well, you know, that's another thing, that the responses are very different, the critical responses, because they are, I've gotten things that it's kind of, for an example, I'll name a scene. There's a little scene in the home theater at the Holmby Hills mansion. Michael and Conrad are in the front row, eating candy and drinking soda. And they're watching home videos, like projected on film from Jackson 5 rehearsals, right?
Okay.
And it's not said, but you can see on the screen. And if you know enough, if you know the Michael Jackson history, you know Jackson 5. Mm-hmm. And running all crazy throughout the theater, pegging candy at each other in the top rows, is like a group of 5 little boys. And they're just having fun. And then Brother Max comes in and they discuss some things. And then he says, take the boys home. And then Brother Max is like, all right. And then that's it. So it's not saying anything. It's not showing anything. They're boys hanging out in a home theater. But with context, it's like, that's a little weird. You know, where are the parents?
Right.
You know? And so things like that, where I really tried to pull off a sense of ambiguous fear, like creepy in a way.
Yeah.
I guess. Like does that sound cool to you? Does that
well,
sound
not
like...
not outright. Again, not outright choosing a side, and not outright saying this or
I'm
that.
just saying what happened.
Just presenting. Here's an element of what you would have seen, and allowing the audience to choose for themselves how they feel about it.
That's it. Clip that. And I'm gonna pitch it around town with that.
There you go. Absolutely.
I'm gonna explain myself.
And please do tell everyone where you got your PR assistance from. And if anyone's looking for someone who is good with ideas and framing them, please do send them my way.
Yeah.
If I can plug myself.
That's and you never know who. That's why I get like, when y'all were growing up, I know you're a poet, right? And I wanted to ask you some of your inspirations were. But you're film school, both artists. And I know we all have watched interviews growing up of our favorite artists. And when they were asked how they got their foot in the door or whatever, they never gave a straight answer, right? And didn't it used to seem annoying, like they're just trying to keep the mystique?
Yeah.
When in reality, there is not even close to a straight way of getting it.
No.
There is not. It can happen a billion different ways.
Right.
And that's so. How do y'all feel about that? Like, do you?
I think that, even in my own life, for not that I've gotten my foot into any big doors yet, I got little feet, but I'm working on it.
Yeah.
But I really do think that dominoes, you can look back on your life and see the dominoes that fell once they fall, but you can't necessarily see how they were lined up for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a certain amount, I think, of having to trust that following the things that really light you up you're going to find your way and happen your way into the right person, the right situation, you're going to rendezvous with the right thing that you're supposed to rendezvous with if you are in a space of being open to it because you're doing what you're passionate about. And it's more the energy and the mindset than it is an action that you can specifically take to get to where you want to be, I think.
Yeah.
If you really can't, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, just same thing as Haleigh. Just like as much as you want to marry the two things that, like, right, I love doing this, and this is what's gonna make me successful, or this is what's gonna make me money, or this is what I can do. That maybe comes later, but at the same time, it's like, okay, if this is what you love, or if this is a passion, or if this is a hobby that you can't give up, keep doing it. Keep doing it. In the meantime, keep doing it whenever you have the chance to, like all these things, and doors will open up for it eventually. I think it's tough. We try to rush it, or we are impatient about it, which it's, I'm in the same boat where it's like, why can I not make these two things, reconcile? Why can't this thing make me money? I feel like I'm good at it. I feel like I enjoy it. I feel like other people should read it. But especially now, there's a million different avenues, like you said, where you by degrees of influence, right? You're talking to this person, you're sharing it with this person, but that all comes down to doing the little things every day, making the conversations, talking to a person about it, continuing to be excited about what you do, just for the simple fact that you like to do it. Once it becomes something where it's like, hey, you should read this, look at it, give me feedback, because it's a professional. It's I need some critique on it because it's gonna make me money someday. No, it's like, it's what I enjoy doing. I like sharing with people because it's what I feel like I should be doing, and eventually that will open up doors on its own, and you can sort of push it or not. There's things that you can do to speed it up or whatever, but it's been hard for me to like really calm myself down to just do that every day, where it's like, okay, I just enjoy doing it, and I just have to continue to do it until things happen where I can take some direction. So
if you actually, like, you have to really give a damn, like you, and I believe, at least in my experience, like it cannot be. And I like Ty West, one of my biggest influences when I was younger. He had his same day job when he made his first 3 films. Like, it's so the idea of I just want to do it full time, right? Screenwriter, at least you can have it full time for the 2-month assignment that you get. And then when you turn that in, now you're unemployed,
Yeah.
you know? And then, so it's a constant, like, it's exhausting. And it's the same thing for anything in entertainment. It's all freelance, you know?
Mhm.
And y'all, yeah. And I think sometimes, I don't know. How do y'all feel about like because I feel like I've seen a lot uh, come and go due to how do I say this? The kind of fear that the financial inconsistency, the looming prospect of that can instill, you know, because you're not going to be getting paid every 2 weeks.
Right.
You know, you have to, how do
Well,
y'all feel?
I think some of that again is and it's an interesting time that we live in, isn't it? Because we do live in a space where there is so much opportunity, so many platforms, so many options for freelance work, for doing things on the side, for, call it side hustles, whatever you want. But I think really where we're coming to as a culture, as a society, is for many of us, the requirement of income for stability of your survival is no longer sustainable as a state of being for most people.
Right.
And so we are shifting ourselves into this, there's a lot of growing pains, obviously, right? But like, I think that we're finally recognizing that it's not enough for things to be transactional, like when and I think that's interesting when you're talking about your script. All the relationships are transactional, and it is sort of like an encapsulation of this is how creativity and this is it has previously been treated or viewed. It is a cash cow. And whatever things might surround the person who's making that cash, whether it's good or bad, we don't really care. We don't really care what that person is experiencing emotionally or physically. We're just trying to put out a product. That person is a product.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
And
an oil well, you just exhaust it and then you move on to the next one. And
that's right. And for my script, that's where we begin the film when it's been exhausted.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So it's a real cheery pick me up.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But it's valuable, I think, in the sense again of we are aware that this picture of that transactional nature of creativity, what it becomes something ugly.
Yeah.
And what I think a lot of us now are trying to do is to just find that space and that energy of, kind of like Shane was saying, doing a creative thing for its own sake, creating something for its own sake, not because it's something that is going to buy your next meal, not because it's something that's going to be the next big thing that Pepsi's going to have on a commercial or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right. But for the sake of that, in the moment is your joyous state of being, and to create and put that out there, that is the highest level of human activity that, I think like that's the most pure form of our humanity, is the thing that you create out of love and out of passion. And I think a lot of people are really starting to want to have more of that and less of the seeing it as just a product that is a fad, that is a trend, and that will be replaced by the constant inundation we have
the next
with
trend. Right. I miss it so much, dude. I miss that time when it was, because I won't lie to you, like I kind of like hate doing it these days, because it's not, I kind of had its soul taken away but I knew what I was signing up for. So, but like, the first two things I put out, it was like cool. And then, you do it out of pure desire, out of pure kind of, you feel like you have something to say. And then you start getting, you spend 6 months on something and then they say, all right, but make it cheaper.
Yeah.
And that what that means is remove sets, remove character. That's the only notes they ever give. And then they will, you'll have there'll be some interest in something like Moonwalked. Priscilla underperforms, and then they never hit you back.
Right.
Because Priscilla is kind of the same vein. And it's really frustrating when you really pour your heart into something and then it comes down to the opening weekend of something else determines whether you even get a meeting, and it's but I still do love it because I don't know anything else. So I don't, not that I hate it, but it's like it's equally it's the reason I get up every morning. It's all that we've heard about before, but it's also like my hair's falling out, not really, but it's like the root of all my problems too. But it's it's a dance that I love to have, and I wouldn't, so
Well,
yeah.
and I think so again, some of it is the mindset, right? And to see it as a dance and to see,
Mhm.
not to see the roller coaster as something that is upsetting necessarily, but that, it's kind of all a little bit of give and take. I think
Right.
that's probably helpful for you to keep going to some
Yeah.
degree, right?
Right.
But
It's
I
all part
do
of the ride.
right. It's all part of the ride. And,
Hmm.
again, I do think though, and Shane and I have talked about this before with other guests too, sort of the idea that now that you have the internet and so many people have access to create things on their own,
Hmm.
the kind of gatekeeping, I guess you could say, that you see in the entertainment business in terms of like there being people who have a say in who gets seen.
Yeah.
Well, it's not necessarily true anymore, right? There
Hmm.
there are plenty of opportunities and places where you can be seen and generate an audience of your own,
Right.
and then you cannot be ignored by those who were the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's still barriers. I mean, there always will be, and there's always going to be the algorithms and everything like that. But uh, I'm excited to see, and again with growing pains, like Haleigh said, there is a bit, I think, of an awakening in a way where and beyond budgeting and wage, that's its whole separate shitty issue where it's like
Hmm.
people just don't make enough to be able to live off anymore, and people can't budget for tomorrow because it's just you can't save. Like it's just nearly impossible for a lot of jobs that way. Um, but what COVID and some other things like definitely taught us was that like we do have to look for a new way of selling our time, right? Because a lot of us, I think, want to be creative. And as much as it hurts to be transactional about the things that we do, I would much rather get paid for what I individually can produce, can do, can creatively make. I would
Yeah.
much rather be paid or compensated for that instead of just being like a waste of space at a job where it's like I just have to be there for 5 or 6 hours, regardless of what I could do, elsewhere with that time. Right. Like
Bingo.
I just have to be there. Like it just sucks that you have to be present at a job that you can't do anything else other than just like stand there. And I think a
Hmm.
lot of people are starting to understand where it's like that is just it's a lot of time to give
Right.
away for not producing anything, not bettering, not cultivating anything on your own.
Right.
And even though you might have to work a little bit harder, even though it's a bit more stressful to create something and then bring it to market, normally it's a lot more fulfilling and rewarding that way. Uh,
Absolutely.
and so I think a lot of people are trying to, we've talked about AI too before, Haleigh, where it's like,
I was absolutely
yeah,
thinking about AI. Create the robots who do all the mundane jobs for us.
exactly.
And I know everyone thinks like, well, then there's, lack of income for other people. Do you really
Right.
want that income? Was it really fulfilling? And don't we need to start asking ourselves that as individuals and as a society that don't wouldn't you rather have a populace of fulfilled, happy people
Yeah,
than to have a populace of people who are just going through the motions for the sake of being able to pay the bills, being able to
exactly.
Right.
survive?
And it's crazy. 30 years ago, or more than 30 years ago, but it's still in the end of the 20th century, people would have called you a communist for saying that.
Yeah, just I mean, on the um, same vein with like AI, Haleigh, and you could jump into it. But the point that I want to make is that normally, I think why AI right now is just such a scary thing for most people is that normally there's a little bit of a ladder or a little bit of like an infrastructure that tags along with technology to where it's like, okay, all right, we progress, we evolve to this point where it's like, all right, so technology takes over this part, and then we as ourselves start doing more of higher level stuff, right? And normally it kind of works out that way, right? It's kind of like this all the way up, right? But now we're like to like this point where like AI and like most general people like are doing kind of the same stuff, and there's no ladder
Mhm.
to be like, and corporations or the big guys want to just cut the labor out, just cut, like make it cheaper,
Right.
more profit, right? If I can replace you with something else, like I will, but I'm not going to
Mhm.
show you like I'm not going to give you another job that you could do better as a human because you have a brain and you could do higher functions. I'm just going to fire you and then
Yeah.
not worry about what you need to do. But normally there at least should be like a ladder or like a line,
Mhm.
and that's maybe what creatives kind of need to show where it's like, okay, AI can do all these things now. So now we at least hopefully should have the time or at least the opportunity to do all these other higher things. But
Right.
we can't when we're still trying to work for our daily bread. And so I
Mhm.
think that's where the AI, I think that's why, at least for me, why I was so scared of it at first, where it's like It's
See, but
doing
I'm
things
excited by
differently.
that. I'm
Yeah.
excited by the idea that it's all happening in real time because, and I'm gonna steal a little quote from my brother John. He says, "If you think long, you think wrong." And I think to some degree, the latter element of it gives us space to think too hard, too much, to make too many, regulations
Yeah.
about this or that, and to make mistakes in that way. When things are
Mhm.
happening in real time and you can't really think about it, and you look at the things that are going on with AI, artists that are, suing over copyright issues, all these
Yeah.
things, it's going to like the way that things are moving is going to be far too fast for any kind of regulations to keep up.
Right.
And so it means that the structures that we have in place currently cannot sustain based on how quickly we're evolving. So
Right.
a new structure needs to be created, which is what really excites me because I think of, younger generations coming in who were born with the internet and who just exist in this space where things rapidly change. What will they create that would replace these structures of society that we're talking about right now? These
Right.
things that we're having conversations about in terms of, survival
Yeah.
mode versus thrive mode.
Mhm.
Those are
What
not
he had
things
said
that
about, or sorry, go ahead.
no, I just think, the younger generations coming up, they're going to expect and assume thrive mode to be what is the natural thing that we should all have. And so I'm excited to see what they create based on that new sort of
Yeah.
belief or that instilled sentiment that they were just born with because they were born into this world. They didn't see it create itself. This
Right.
is what the world is to them.
I think when specifically when you did the measurement with your hands, it made me, it's the way lines between reality and media and what it's gotten so blurred,
Mhm.
like it's no longer just the
Yeah.
internet is reality now. It's not like you can just post some crazy Facebook status and it's nothing. Like you can lose your job over it, right?
Right.
And um Facebook, God, I just made myself sound old. You can't go on MySpace and just
Yeah. Right.
talk to Tom.
Right.
But what you said about I have said for like the last 10 years, after I remember the conversation I was having, this weird, sketchy living room, but I believe the technology moved too fast for our own good in the last like 15 years. I don't think we were ready, man. Because you look at these devices, these smartphones, and what they are capable of. And then you look at what we use them for, man. And like it's kind of just really argue online. And I feel like they could be, I don't know. I worry a bit.
Mhm.
I
Well,
think I'm
see,
just naturally a bit not, I don't like the word cynical because that sounds, when I think of cynics, I think of people who are curmudgeons,
Yeah.
right?
For sure.
But I
Yeah.
think it's just, I have a bit more, and not to bring it back to, you read, especially with Moonwalk, they're all about America. That's the theme through all of them. And Moonwalk, there's the blatant symbolism. And I just feel I have a little, I feel like I have reason to be pessimistic about the way the government will get their hands on things, because
Yeah.
we need them and they don't really need us.
Yeah.
no, see, here's again though. This is where I like to do the little I flip it to my toxic
Yeah. You're in
positivity.
good company because
No, it's not toxic, man.
I
Go
have
ahead.
this with I have this with Haleigh every single time. I'll bring up the bad and she'll be like, yeah, but have you looked at it like this? And like, well, yeah, and there
Right.
is that.
I
See,
don't even
well,
like to call it good or bad, man.
it
It's
no,
just
really, again, because here's the thing: there is no good
yeah.
or bad, right? Like that
Mhm.
is the inherent nature of reality is that it's subjective to every individual,
Yeah.
and like life has only the meaning that you assign to it.
Right.
And so when we, again, and we talked about this off camera before, I really do think it is a matter of we in our generation have been conditioned by practice and by the things that are practiced in the media and the culture around us to
Hmm.
focus on what is not working, focus on the problem, focus on the
Right.
anxiety of a situation rather than to look at opportunities, look at possibilities, focus on the positive, focus on their,
Hmm.
just an energy of good being available.
Mhm.
And
Right. And
so we
yeah.
have to practice that. I don't think that I don't think anyone should like blame themselves for that. I think that we just need to recognize, well, we're all humans. And so we all have this need to connect and this need to be a part of the greater whole, right? Because we recognize ourselves as a piece of it. And
Right.
again, as much as I understand what you're saying in terms of technology, we may not have been ready for how quickly it advanced.
Mhm.
Hmm.
But again, when you think of kids who are growing up right now, who this is all they've known, They didn't need to be ready, get ready, become ready. They're born into it. They are ready
Right.
to see what it can do, to take it to the next level, to take it to the next level in a way that can
Hmm.
be harmonious and beneficial to everyone. And I
Right.
think if we just like leave more openness and more space for that to be created, and have that just
Right.
just being open to the new possibilities, I think more things come into your experience that look more
Right.
what you would
I,
consider to be positive.
I worry about the attention span. And then, because like TikTok and whatnot is very big right now. And I don't know, man. I just worry.
Yeah.
Just because but also I don't worry because I use every single moment of my life for, I will put it into something somehow,
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
and I just sit back and watch. And then
Right.
I try to, that's why I only do period pieces because I like to let time pass. And I hate seeing a cell phone on screen. It's about escapism. A cell
Yeah.
phone yanks you out. You got one in your
Mhm.
pocket.
Oh, for
Lazy.
sure.
And I like to, anyway, sorry. But yeah, I just think you got to let time do its thing before we can. And it's just, I don't know, man. It's just that everything is on display now. And everyone's opinion is just, they're screaming into the black hole of the internet, this void. And I feel like it just makes people, I don't want to get dark on you for a minute, but for the
Go
first
ahead.
20 years, or no, it was about 20 years ago, till now, the suicide rate has gone up, obesity gone up, in like social interaction, all of these things, like the graph that like has charts human,
Yeah.
not behavior, but human altogether, like societal interaction, I guess you could say. I don't think it's a coincidence that all of these things, after a very like century worth of study, has steeped with when this technology was introduced. I
Yeah.
think I don't.
See, I think again, what the issue is that it
When I say
has
technology, let me just clarify. I mean like social media and smartphones, specific tablets and all that. I don't
right.
need.
But
That's what I.
the interconnectivity that we now have, I think, is it's that juxtaposition that we needed. We needed that contrast. We needed that big like shift in technology and the capacity to access so much information and so much of what everyone is doing, so
Mm,
that we could look at it and recognize that the old systems where everyone, was everyone really happy in all of those little things, or were we just going through the motions and saying we were happy because we expected that that was what was supposed to be heard?
right.
Right? How many people were really being honest about that? And how many, if you look at, think baby boomer generation, how
Right.
many of them wanted to cash in their chips but didn't out of obligation? How
Right.
many of them wanted to say I'm depressed, I'm anxious, and
Mm-hmm.
but lied about it? So
Right.
it a case of technology has come up and suddenly people have become anxious, or is it a case that these things have come up and now we have started looking at ourselves and saying, oh, maybe we weren't really happy. Oh, maybe we haven't really been allowing each of us individually to follow our passions and our highest joy.
Yeah.
And maybe that is the thing that everyone's supposed to be doing. And we don't know how to do it because we're so conditioned and used to following the system and the routine and this is what is expected of you,
Right.
that everyone is now recognizing the things that are expected of the system didn't work. I mean, think about your own parents, right? It didn't work for them any more than it's working for us. They just put their head down and dealt with it because that's what
Yeah.
they were told to do.
Mm-hmm. And that's the
So
thing. Yeah. And I wonder though if social media and whatnot is the best tool to look inward because it's all about how good everything looks. You're never going to see someone's page where it's like, damn, or it's the opposite. Now everybody can say their honest truth that they're depressed and that billions of people can say that. I don't want to see it every day, man, because that's going to bring me down. You feel me? Like the
That's where like,
privacy.
go ahead. I just gonna say that's where, like boundaries, especially like everything is a double-edged sword, especially with technology, right? I mean, it could be our saving grace, or it could be like, just destruction.
Yes.
But even for me, like, yeah, I totally resonate with that because knowing the entire world's struggles at this point, like once everything became global and I knew everything that was going on, whether I believe it or not, face value, or like whether I really know what's going on, I feel responsible for. And we actually it was who were we talking to, Haleigh, when he said the Dunbar number, right? Am I saying that right?
Oh yeah, no, and I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember the
Well,
yeah.
there's a certain number, like I think it's like 150 is like kind of like the cutoff where it's like that's your tribe. Like that's like the max amount of people that you can feel
Sean
somewhat
was the one
connected.
talking to us.
Yeah.
Sean Koch, yeah,
Yeah.
author.
Somewhat connected or responsible for, or that you have like, influence to
Yes.
help or better, right?
Hmm.
Once it's past that number, you can't. It's just a number. Like all the people
Right.
dying elsewhere, like it sucks to think about, but there's nothing that I can do about it.
Mhm.
But when it's globally and you see it all the time through your phone, um, so all that. So I think really what it comes down to now is like creating boundaries for those things, creating boundaries for those
Right.
avenues. And I think that's what people are starting to do, at least for sure my generation. And I hope the next generation, well, actually, our generation should really teach the next generation and on, where it's
Yeah.
like, listen, you need to turn that off for a little while because it's good for you. And
Yeah.
that needs to be instilled in every person where it's like, this is a great tool, this is a great thing, but you need to turn it off and you need to live some life. And so
See,
Yes.
as long as that is still happening, like that's going to be
Hmm.
what determines it. So
If I
I'm
can
gonna
say
say
real quick,
no. Go ahead.
what was he? Damn, I almost forgot it now. He
The
just said
Dunbar number.
yeah, it was 150. You go ahead, say what you were
something like
saying. I
that.
don't want
Yeah.
to hold it up, but it was you reminded me of something. Um,
Well,
damn
I
man, I just had it in my head.
I
But,
the thought that I'm having is I appreciate where you're coming from. I understand, and I don't want to call it like a doom and gloom thing. Like I personally have stopped watching the news. I don't watch it at
yeah,
all
Yeah,
anymore
either.
because I
So
understand for myself the emotion it creates in me is not useful to me. It's important to recognize for your individual self what things interrupt your internal peace and
yeah,
to choose the things that do not. And that
right.
goes to Shane's setting boundaries. And I do believe that that is true. What I do also think, though, is that there's a certain amount of us not trusting ourselves and not trusting younger generations to naturally understand and come to that conclusion on their own. For
Hmm.
kids to not come to a conclusion on their own that this thing in my hand that is very stimulating to my brain is not inducing a peaceful state within me. And I want to find that. And I'm going to do
Right.
what I have to do to find that. And I think that that is the valuable thing. Because if you do look at, and this is something I've talked about in another podcast of mine, but if you look at the way that news, for example, 24-hour news is absolutely produced in a way that is meant to induce a state of stress and fear.
Yeah.
Listen to the music, look at the colors, look at the things that are flashing up. It is absolutely every bit as much
Hmm.
produced as a film or a TV program, right? It is put
Propaganda.
together, it is meant to elicit a certain response from you because you become addicted to the chemicals that your body creates when you are in stress mode. Your body
Hmm.
gets so used to those chemicals your brain creates when you're in stress mode, you accidentally become addicted to that
Right.
because it's familiar and comfortable and you keep going back to it. And that is where we're at, where, like I've talked about, it's about practicing looking for those other things that give you peace, that are your passion, that lead you to where
Yeah.
your body's making those chemicals where you're happy,
Right.
right? To follow that direction. And we have not been conditioned to practice the positive,
Hmm.
but we have come to a space where we recognize that's what needs to be done because we've seen these things through social media. And I think that maybe we have to have more trust in young people and in children that being born into this where that is something that is just a fact of their existence is social media and the internet and all this being access in your hand, that they will have a natural capacity to look at that and say, I do need to step away from that and find the things that align specifically to me.
I
Right.
believe they will. Like I trust that the pendulum is going to swing back and all these things, right? Like once it swings out to the most extreme, comes back, right? And I mean that's how I look at politics too. I'm just like, okay, right? We're hopefully nearing towards right the middle. Like
Mm-hmm.
hopefully it's not
Hmm.
going to swing out any farther. It's like starting to slow down. And I totally think that the next generation will figure it out eventually. But for me, I'm just trying to like minimize the damage, hopefully, of the next generation by at
Right.
least giving them a little heads up of like, you should do this. Like it's a suggestion from me. Like just like drinking, right? Like at some point when Hayden turns 12 or 13 or 14, like, yeah, I'll probably let him have a little sip of like alcohol or like beer just because he
That's
knows,
your son, or
yeah, just so that he
cool.
knows like he's gonna find out what it means to be drunk and he's gonna find out what it means to be hungover and all those things.
Hmm.
Like I don't need to like blast him with that because he'll figure it out. But is it good to be like, listen, buddy, I'm just trying to give you just a little taste of like what this might be like so that
Right.
when you do fall and you're going to fall hard anyway, that it's not going to be like nearly as bad. And they may figure it out. Like they may figure out that they do need real connections or whatever. But if that's
Mhm.
20 years down the line, if they're in their 30s and they finally like realize they need a real person after being on their
Right.
phone, like it's just gonna be so much harder for them. And so
Yeah.
like you could be hopeful without ignoring problems. And I guess that's where I
Mhm.
try to like stay where I'm like, of course I'm hopeful about tomorrow because especially when you have kids, you have to be because like this has to get better just for the simple sake that somebody else is going to be here after me. But
Right.
I
And
don't
what
want
you
to ignore
said,
the problems by, you know, always
yeah.
want to be on top
And
of them.
every generation, I feel like what you're saying is we need to be the first generation that instead of blocking the previous, we need to kind of throw an arm around them,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
right? Instead of like, because everyone is always younger generation this and that ain't
Mm-hmm.
music, that ain't nothing, that ain't. And now we need to be like, no, we'll show you the way. And I don't know if, but what you said, and if you see me jotting something down over here, I don't get
Mhm.
the best memory if I'm not like
You're
that's
fine.
what
Don't worry about
Yeah,
it.
you're good. Yeah.
you should see my walls over here. It looks like I'm a murderer.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. I
it's
see a little bit over there. You got the string and dude.
oh
No,
yeah.
that's
I mean it's sticky notes. Yeah, it just this is kind of a very early starting process thing. But when the international conflict that we can be exposed to via the social medias, like you mentioned, and all of these things that we can feel that make us feel so sad for outside these borders and whatnot, for better or for worse, living in this country, America, in its way, in the way that we America kind of allowed us the privilege to not have to care. It's
Right.
dark. It is
Yeah.
really dark, especially if you, but, and that's like, that's just the honest truth, you know? And that's why when I see a lot of like, like let's just say the Ukraine thing with Russia, for like 2 weeks, everybody was allied, right? And then they just stopped kind of posting about it. And it
Mhm.
just feels kind of insincere. And I feel like some of it stems from subconscious guilt for the actions of our ancestors, specifically for suburban America. And that's them trying to say, I'm not them, I'm my own person. But no, your hands are still dirty if you live here. If you're
Mhm.
like, and it's so I'm just trying to that's random. It might sound random, but I want to, just to keep different topics and whatnot. So,
Mhm.
but in the same realm, I guess.
I mean, when you look at things like that, though, the global issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
As an individual, unless you're going to fly yourself there to try to help, right? What can
Yes.
you really do?
Yeah.
Right.
And so I don't think that it's a not caring. I think that it is an understanding that by me sending my energy of anxiety, upset, sadness, disappointment, whatever it is, to that situation, I am only perpetuating that situation. I do believe, people can think I'm crazy if they want. I do believe in the law of attraction. If you focus on the problem, you activate more of the problem. If you focus on the good and the positive and the possibilities,
Mm-hmm.
you activate more of the solution.
Mhm.
Right. And I think the energy of activating a solution is where people need to be. And, to kind of Shane's point a little bit, when you're thinking of not ignoring a problem, not wanting to ignore a problem, I think the best thing that anyone individually can do is to just be the example of good, right?
Right.
Like you can tell people things, but they won't always be in a space where they can hear you.
Mhm.
You can protest against certain things that government is doing, but the government may not necessarily be in a space to hear you,
They don't
right?
need to. They don't need to listen.
Right. So again, it comes down to that thought that I've had before. A new system needs to be put in place where individuals, people, society, those of us who want good for everyone
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
can create something where we say, government, we no longer need you. Gatekeepers of whatever industry that have been keeping everyone else out for the sake of profit, we no longer need you.
Right.
Jobs that are don't pay enough and are not fulfilling, we no longer need you. You have
Like a
always been the
utopia, is what
one.
you're saying. Right.
And I know people that probably will think I'm airy fairy crazy, but
No,
listen,
it's dude, you probably I
oh,
know like thinking like that and living like that, you're bound to be a more of an uplifted soul,
Yeah, for sure.
And like I spend years on like what you dabble in or what you delve into is kind of a reflection of who you are. And if
Mhm.
you like any of my stuff that is out, you'll see it's all very kind of bleak. And I remember and people have been like, why do you want to make this? Why do you write this? But it's because it's just I want it to be honest. And I feel like I don't, you know, and it seems you're the same way, just a little bit on a different spectrum that or opposite spectrum. You don't have any bias. There's no real like political or ideological bias here. You just feel like you want good. but it's
I'm not
like
gonna listen. I'm not gonna sit here and act like there's not darkness in me. Like one of my other series I'm writing is from the perspective of Death, the Grim Reaper, who is telling
yeah,
of her. And like I have there's, but and I should send it to you. Maybe this would,
yeah.
I would love for you to read it. But and I've told Shane about it. What all of the stories that she tells essentially are of soul collections that look like a really bleak, horrible, depressing, awful, painful life. But every single soul after death collects them, reviews their life, and recognizes the value it had, the beauty that was in it, the joy that they could have experienced in it, what good that came from the pain they experienced. Because from a place of a broader perspective, from a place of unconditional love, you can see that there is nothing that is not of worth, of value, that there's a reason why all of these things are available to us as humans, whether it's positive or negative, because in order to know yourself, which is what we all want, is to know ourselves well. You need to see yourself in darkness and in light and in all of the shades in between. That's the only way for you to have a truly broad perspective of yourself.
Yeah,
right?
without hope, there's no fear, right? Or you need
It's
them. It's like a
it's
battle.
the yin and yang. It's like you
Yeah.
said, it's the dance. It
Mhm.
is part of the human experience, right?
It's
That's what we
fundamental.
all
Yeah,
came for, right? Like it's
that's why I'm here.
I hate to throw in Barbie movie in here, but like it's like, sure, the plastic perfect world might seem perfect,
Yeah,
but if you don't have the contrast, if you don't have the pain, how good can the good moments be if you don't have the juxtaposition to hold them against?
yeah. I knew that movie was going to be great because no, the writer and director, Greta Gerwig, Noah Baumbach. I knew when I was surprised when they were attached, but I was like, okay, this is going to be something different. This isn't just going to be like a Barbie, like go buy the new toy out. This is going to be something good. And it made $1 billion. And I know I have a lot of nieces and nephews who that movie means a lot to. So
Yeah.
that's
And I appreciate that sentiment that is in that film, that this human experience involves sometimes being sad, sometimes thinking thoughts that you don't want to think, sometimes experiencing feelings that you don't enjoy, right? But if you didn't experience that thing that you didn't want, how would you know the thing that you do want?
Have you guys ever seen Foxcatcher? Not to change we'll get back on topic.
Yep.
You've seen it?
Yep.
I haven't.
So just to give you if you're interested after this, if you ever want to, of course you can read. I'll send you whatever outside of Moonwalk, which I sent already. But if you ever want to watch something to see what I go for, it's like vibe, aesthetic, everything. Watch Foxcatcher from 2014. Yep. I think it's the greatest like film of all time. And but if someone, the amount of times I recommended it, this girl the other night, she was like, I'm so excited to finally watch it. And then she got back to me. She was like, this is what you've been talking about. But I think it is I've seen damn near every American horror movie in the last 25 years or whatever. Yeah. And Foxcatcher is the only thing to ever give me nightmares. And it's a John DuPont, Steve Carell. Yep. Bennett Miller's like the greatest. Yeah, that is I made sure before this, I was like, you're going to fit that movie in there.
Well, so tell us what is it about that movie then? Or can you talk a little bit about your inspiration? So what other things brought you to, for example, so like what things brought you to that movie as a creative, as a person who has interest in these things? And what were those influences that brought you to that one big influence?
Well,
as long as, in the vein of dominoes that fall that you couldn't have expected.
Right. And it's funny because, I saw a lot of things, man. And I really love Capote and I really love Moneyball. And then Bennett Miller's next film was Foxcatcher. And he hasn't done anything since. And that's one hell of a note to end on. If you just quietly bow out, like that's a big flex. But so it's based on a true story of in Pennsylvania, John DuPont. He's an heir to the DuPont dynasty. He's kind of like the black sheep of the family. He's isolated, but he's incredibly wealthy. Shane, you've seen it, so I'm probably
real weird. Steve Carell does like a great job, and I haven't done my studies on DuPont himself, but I can see that he took the time to like into that character. So
this is the only film I've ever seen in which the true story itself is crazier than the actual movie. Yeah. Usually the movie dials it up to 11.
Right.
Like for an example, Oh my God, the movie, it's so good. But when in real life, John DuPont got flung off of a horse, right? Because his mother had all these like $1 million horses, and he landed on a fence post, and he became a eunuch. He had to have his
Oh, wow.
removed, right? And then that's never even hinted at in the movie.
No,
But
it's not.
feel it. You feel it though.
Yeah.
Remember the gallery scene? Mark, gear up, practice in the gallery. That 3 a.m. wrestling session.
Yeah.
And like John DuPont's like an old 65-year-old man.
Yeah.
And it's like the way the presidential portraits are lined up, like just in that dim light, and it looks like they're staring. It's just like, I don't know how Bennett Miller did it, but
Yeah.
there's all these implications of
Yep.
things, and it's all about the man's wealth. So I tried to do, and then yeah, it's just so I love it. But basically, he funds a wrestling camp called Foxcatcher Farms, and yeah, and then Mark Schultz and Dave Schultz, two Olympic gold medalists, come on over, and then that's all I'll say, I guess. But John DuPont paid the most money ever spent on a stamp, $9 million on a stamp, dude. Are you
To be
kidding
on
me?
the stamp or just a
It
stamp?
No.
must have been like a
It's-
collector's
no.
special.
That'd be crazy. If I was on a stamp, dude, I'd pay.
Yeah.
I have to take out like 2 lifetimes worth of loans.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anybody watching this at any point, if it's 30 years from now somehow, watch that movie, dude, please.
No,
Because-
and I could attest to that because I just, now that you bring it up, I'm like, it was a really good movie when I look at what they did. Because any movie that takes outwardly, like, and when you just read the story as it is, you're just like, man, that dude was really like messed up, like just a gross dude. But when you make the movie and you're able to when you're able to still depict the villain or the bad guy or person doing all these terrible things, we can still depict them in like a gross manner where like this dude was messed up and he had all these things wrong, and you could still feel pity for them, like you can feel the humanness where it's like, oh man, but look what he went through, right? Like look at like how he progressed into this thing. It's very artful to do that because
and it's
like empathy has its bounds and limits, right? And those limits are within ourselves, right? And so it's always that experiment of like, how far can we push, empathy? And that's also like it's a weird conversation too when you think of like the recent or just our fascination with like serial killers, right?
Yeah.
And all those things where it's like, as a society, like, on the record, we should abhor that. And it's like, no tolerance. Like that's crazy stuff. Like that's just bad for society. That's just bad for people. On the same level, it's like we do these, docu-series or these series like Jeffrey Dahmer and all these things where it's like, but they were a human, and this is how this human, became this,
right.
It's a weird, just
And
talk about just the ambiguous feelings and the adult closure and like all those things where it's like they make you feel uncomfortable, but in such a human,
in a primal
not a
way.
good way, but
yeah. And it's funny because I think those like a documentary is different, but like a series on like a John Wayne Gacy or something is cool and can be good. But for Dahmer specifically, and you can edit this or keep this in, that's fine. I don't just because I just feel like it was almost like fetishized.
It was.
There were scenes in there where I was like, this feels as if they're going for something almost erotic.
Yeah.
And it's not it wasn't, and it was just odd to me.
Well, I don't know. So I haven't watched the Dahmer series, but I did read the My Friend Dahmer, the graphic novel, My Friend Dahmer, from a person who had gone to high school with him and knew him.
I like that movie.
I kind of, I don't know. It's interesting you bring this up. What it makes me think of is actually an episode of my fictional podcast that I wrote where the characters go to what is it's an outpost in the cosmos where souls who have played villains in human existence go to rehabilitate because of all of the hate that they have absorbed from humanity. Like their soul needs some time. So there's like Dahmer is there, Alfred, Hitler is there. Who am I thinking? Is it Alfred? Who's Fish? Albert Fish? I can't remember.
Fish. Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, right. They're there and they're just like sitting at a table, crap. And it's their soul essentially elected to come to Earth to be a villain for the sake of being that contrast in human experience. And they absorbed a lot of hate from humanity for it. And now their soul has to go and rehabilitate. Right. But it plays with that concept and that idea that no matter how bad someone looks from the outside, they are still a human being, and something internally motivated that. Right. And on some level, when we as humans look at that, whether it's to the level of a serial killer or someone who's really awful, the empathy element is, I can see in me that I have had thoughts or feelings, maybe not to that degree, obviously, but like the darkness I see in that I have seen in myself. And that's where our fascination is. You know, I've seen that in me. Why do I not make the choices that take me to that extreme? And how did that person get there?
Yeah.
Right.
Is it nurture or nature? You know, all these different like
and
questions.
I think it's both. You know, you can't ignore either.
Yeah, people act like it's always one thing. But I had a question for you that I wrote down. Have you ever written any, or you have any interest in writing any nonfiction? Because it seems, I know the mystical. It seems like that's up your.
I have.
Okay, you can say.
Yeah, no, I have thought of. I have an interest in writing a. I am big in like the metaphysical, the mystics, and then and gurus and teachers and things like that. Big fan of like Neville Goddard, big fan of Alan Watts, like, you know, Esther Hicks. The thing that fascinates me, the thing that I enjoy the most about all of it and that I would like to write about is that whether you look at these people on this angle or you look at like someone like a Graham Hancock who's done journalistic investigation into, you know, the sort of human history and how things tie into like cave art and altered states of consciousness, what fascinates me is that the message always comes down to the same thing wherever you're going, when you're going into this like that spiritual journey with, and this is the nonfiction element that I would love to put together, is that they're all saying the same thing. We are all connected, and the highest form of any human expression is always love, right? And the message is always feel as good as you can, as often as you can, love as much as you can, even when it's difficult. That is how you can be a joyful human in your experience, and that is how you can be an example of how others can be joyful in their experience, right? And that's the solid one unifying message when you look at any of that stuff. So like that does fascinate me, the how you can go to different teachers from different philosophies, from different religions, from different cultures, and that is always the message. Look for the good and look for the love.
The foundation is always, because that's what I see. Yeah, because that's what they need to be instilled with as humans to live any sort of prosperous life. Yeah, it's I like that. And Shane, I had a question for you.
Sure.
Now, do you try to, you ever like have a character or a potential plot in your mind, and how would you like go about conveying that through like a poem, would you say? Or how was it like just your process in general, I guess?
Yeah. And
so that's the hardest way, that making somebody feel something from 20 words. That's like, you know, that's in I can't do it. You know, it's hard. And it's very impressive. And it's just classical. It's classical American poet. You know, it's cool. No one cares about a screenwriter.
Well, no, I mean, and it's hard to do what you do as well. Like I've wanted to write more fiction. I've wanted to write more stories, but for me, like plot gets tough for me because I feel like I have to have it all planned out, or I have to have it like, for me, like I just love doing like scared like character sketches, and that's kind of almost like what my poems kind of end up being like, where it's just like I have this feeling or I have this image, idea, whatever it is. You know, normally it just starts off as like an emotion, like I feel lonely. Why am I lonely? And I kind of latch on to like a bit of an image or a piece of whatever I have, right? Sometimes it's pretty ambiguous or whatever. And then it's really just a sketch. It's just like an extended sketch of how I'm trying to like describe it and get it out and use the words that are most, you know, original and genuine and intimate, right? Because I talked to other people about this, where it's like we are so used to and that's kind of why AI is subpar in a lot of ways, because it skims, right? It takes the top and the superficial of, you know, all of our language, right? And so you ask, you know, the bulk of us, like, what we think of when we think of the color blue or the color green. And like the first 5 answers will be like what we all think of, what we're all conditioned to respond to when somebody asks us that question, right? You keep asking yourself that. And then you start to get down to the layers, you start to get down the language that is yours, that is yours, like independently. This is what I use to describe myself, this is what I feel, what I feel novel with. And so that's part of it. So that's part of the poetry. And then it depends on also if I'm writing just for myself, where I'm just writing to kind of get it out, or if I'm writing for, where I want to read this or where I want other people to read it. So then that extension, so it's kind of like an extended metaphor, where it's like I keep on extending this idea or this thing, this emotion or whatever, and I keep redescribing it in different ways until either I feel like it's the truest that's ever going to be, or it's more, it's most accessible to anybody who reads it, and even if it's just like one line or 4 or 5 words that like, everybody
kind of people can, right.
And so that's kind of how I start, and that's how a lot of mine are. But yeah, I mean, I would love to do more. I think for me, plot scares me a little bit. How do I get a convincing plot? But then the more that I read, I just read Grapes of Wrath. I just finished that like a few weeks ago, and awesome book. If you guys haven't read it, Haleigh, if you haven't read it,
that was a read the book, watch the movie film class that I had.
Yeah, that's a classic. Yeah, that's it. I never read it, but I know it's, just in literary culture, it's a classic.
It is. And it totally repeats itself. Like I was telling a couple other people about it, like the way that, the Okies were treated is the way that we treat immigrants today. The way that people are starving for work and being laid off and being, given all these, it's the same thing it was back then. Same thing. Corporations would rather burn their product than allow people to use it or pick it or, digest it, whatever. But so fun fact, I use it actually as my toilet reading. So that is my toilet reading book. So
you got to have one, right?
Well, because you assume, at least you should, if you're regular, right? You'll drop it at least once a day.
If you're not Kim Jong-un, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You don't need a lot of cheese, whatever else. Like you should be visiting the bathroom for a few minutes, sitting down at least once a day. And with those types of books, I equate them to basically what a series is now, where it's like it's the progression, and so it has to be this long thing, and you have to like visit it every day to keep up with the story and to really feel connected to the characters. But when I bring up that book, it's like it's not a it is really just like a character study, a character sketch all the way through. It's a very simple plot where it's like these people are homeless. This is how they figured out they move. But so trying to just trying to start simple with a plot and then just focus on the characters. I think that's probably one of the best things that
I think I'm going to go ahead and just put it out there. I think we need to be a little bit of a dream team here. I have we can talk about it off camera, but I have a movie idea I was mentioning to you that I have a whole plot wrote out. The help that I need is for riddles to be created, Shane, poetry, and for screenwriting to be assisted with. Hi there, Michael. So let's collaborate. I'm so excited already.
I'm open to working with anybody, man. I want to work with anybody. Real quick, we'll get back to that. So I don't forget, Shane, what you said is the reason why I and all 3 of us should never be threatened by AI, because they can do everything but have an original thought.
Right.
And that's what we bring to the table. So
I'm with you on that. And I wanted to say that too, that because I've looked at like ChatGPT, and you can look at things online and you can see what's been written by AI and what hasn't. Right. And you can see things that when it comes to art, what is AI art and what is
I'm not impressed. And even though it's sold for like $200,000, you see that at the Gasconian, I think it's sold for like $200,000 a piece, the first ever like AI art.
And I don't have a problem with that, because again, abundance to everyone. Everyone should have an opportunity to be abundant in life in whatever way you can. The thing with AI is that there's never going to be that human flavor. Right? Like the passion, the creativity, the emotion that we can put into it cannot be expressed by AI. And that is where you're going to see the differences.
Stories are supposed to connect us. Stories have always connected us. They bring us together. And it's like, I don't want to hear what a robot thinks, man. I'm not interested, because it's not
relatable. You can't relate to that. Right. And that's what it is.
Unless it's done in a way that is like, showing like, or one of the themes is this is not human. Like, if it's off and it being off is part of the appeal. Like
Right.
if it's
Right.
AI, you know what I mean? But if it's trying to sell me on like some standard drama, and it's like I'm not really buying it here. I'll never buy it. I'm against it. I really am. Not to
I'm
be
not
that guy, but I'm
my
against it.
I'm again toxic
Because I've done
positivity.
this for too long, for free, for 10 years. And now I just
See,
don't, not that I'm against it, but we've all done it. And I feel like if what we do, if all of a sudden AI starts doing it and popping off, the way I see it, they're going to end up taking those jobs and we'll still be working labor.
Right.
no,
You know,
I don't think
as a country.
I think that it's just another tool, right? This is the way I view it. And whether like I look at it as, think about early days of photography. How many
Mm-hmm.
artists or portrait artists thought that they were going to be made obsolete by the photography? When it came to moving pictures, right? Now we go into movies, now we go into film, and those pictures that we can take are now becoming a on-screen film. And how many people, actors in vaudeville and different thought that that was going to go away, that theater was going to go away. Here we are in the day that we have Broadway is still alive and well and thriving, right? Video killed the radio star. We thought that MTV was going to kill radio stars, and yet podcasts exist and audio exists. It all exists. We don't have to. I just don't think we have to negate anything. We can have an inclusive universe where everything is able to be used as a tool for people to more easily express themselves in some way. And the thing that I think is, look at AI as a tool, it's the painter's toolkit, right? It's just another brush in your toolkit. It's just something else you can use, whether it's for brainstorming or for whatever it is that you're doing. Leverage it to your advantage. Leverage it as a creative person to your advantage. You can't close Pandora's box once it's opened. You can't. You look towards the solution. Look towards, how can I use this to benefit me? Look towards, how can this be? And I really do. I think, because for example, I do abstract art. I don't have classical art training, but I have used AI art to generate images of like characters to come up with ideas for these character bios I've done. So it is a tool that I have used. If you look at it as just the next technological tool creative people can use to express themselves, to me, it becomes creativity being more accessible to more people. And the more that we can express ourselves creatively, and the more people who can express creative ideas and learn to put emotions and energy and that abstract into creativity, the more we can communicate with each other on a deeper level.
Right.
Because creativity in a lot of ways transcends the boundaries and limitations of culture and language.
Right.
And I think go ahead.
Real quick, I just want to say I think the reason for some of my AI opinions is because everything has changed. You can be podcast, you can be an actor and you put it on Instagram and you're real, and then the right person sees it, this and that. And every aspect of entertainment or media has changed, except really for writing. You still got to write the whole piece. You still have to have it read. The only difference is really that it's through email. So, and I'm so thankful that it hasn't. I like the classical kind of thing of it. You still got to do this. You have to. But all I'm saying that for is because I think that can stem from some of my I hope not obsolete anytime soon, opinions on AI. But it makes me feel weird because it's just a man and a keyboard kind of. It's close to poetry, How do you feel about it, dude?
What's that?
How do you feel about it?
Yeah, no, I mean, it hits close to home, dude. I still write all my rough drafts like of poetry and stuff on a typewriter. I love typewriters. I've got like 20
really.
Yeah. And
I went through the phase, dude. I couldn't do it. I was like, this is the whiteout. I was like, I'm just going back to like what's efficient.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I mean, if I have to edit anything, I still take the rough draft. I throw it on a computer, but like just for me to get down words, it's easier for me to do that because like I have such a hard time being like critical, like pre-critical of like what I'm writing. So it's like just for me, like get it down on paper,
right?
It that way, printing it right away. It's like it's okay, boom, it's here. Like I'm going with it, and then just the mechanics of it, the kinesthesiology, of doing it that way. I just love it, and I love the story of it. I love like the writer hunched over, banging out a sweet piece of truth or poetry or story that's going to change the world, right? Like that is,
and like you said earlier with the shaving and whatnot, it's a routine.
It is very much so.
It's like, and that allows you when you're at that typewriter, all right, it's go time. You're not writing notes on your phone.
Yeah.
And so I agree with that 100%. Or
But
I
same
can,
thing, like AI is like, and I have to remember that naturally there's going to be a dip in other things because AI is the shiny new tool in the
Mhm.
toolbox. And
yeah,
I'm going to figure out what best to use it for. And then it's just going to be like every other tool in the toolbox, I hope.
I hope
That's what I see. That's where I'm at. That
that's what.
it will
Yeah,
just become from
well,
typewriter to computer to type, from recording. It's just the next technology. Yes,
There
it
always
seems
has to be human
big,
input. Like no matter what, even to make it good, like there always has to be human input to
right?
feed it back through. Like it still has to loop back to a human inputting
yeah.
and then
Hmm.
reacting and then inputting again. It's I don't know.
And I just feel like in this country, at least if it becomes regulated, it's going to be like, how do we use this? And how do we put these in Iraq? You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
just don't see it being used for like nothing but what America does, man. And it's, I'm not, I'm just saying, it's,
And at first it certainly will be. Like that's the thing. Like
yeah,
it will be used like for all the
Again, that's like anything when you look at things from an institutional point of view, whether it's government or even education or medicine or
hmm,
whatever it is. The next new thing is always going to be used from a bureaucratic
yeah,
standpoint for a bottom line type mentality.
like
right.
nuclear
But
fission will
but
be used as a bomb before it's used as energy, right? Like that just happens.
Yeah.
You
right.
know?
But
Like,
again, it comes down to, I think, as individuals to find that place where you are aligned with your own truth in a way that is enough of an example. You can draw
mhm,
enough other people. The new system, the new whatever it is that will replace these things that are, because I mean, let's have this like little thought experiment. How different is AI as a concept to the idea of bureaucracy? It really isn't. There's some
well,
amount of human input to keep it going, but to a certain extent, it's just generating and regurgitating and spitting things out that have been that it has access to that have been. It can't create the new,
right.
right?
And my whole thing is, say for the Iraq comment, my fear stems from the arts,
Mhm.
from what our thing, and that's the difference between AI and an artist is what I worry about more than because the government. I don't think, you know, I don't know. Can't keep going though. Sorry.
Well, it really is. It's if you look at, say AI government, that
Mhm.
is the sort of, I don't want to, non-humans, maybe not the way I want to say it. It's the capacity. It's not emotional. It
Right.
is looking towards just again regurgitating what we've done and going through mechanical motions, right?
Right.
The spark of the new, the spark of something fresh, the spark
Hmm.
of something that comes from a place deep within you. It
Right.
doesn't exist there. And I think that I think it's a good thing in the sense of your audience, right? And I think there's billions of people on this planet. There's got to be an audience for everybody, right? There's enough to go around. This idea that there's not enough for everyone to have an audience is just a lackful mindset that is false,
Right.
right? That you are going to find, whether you use AI as a tool or not, you're going to find your audience, your people, the people that need to hear your message. Because the
Hmm.
reason that any of us creates out of, you wouldn't want to create something, you wouldn't have the desire, the passion, the calling to create
Yeah.
something for its own sake if there were not someone out there, some
Yeah.
audience out there that needed your voice, your style, the
Yeah.
way that you say the message. And it's like what I talked about with all the different, spiritual gurus.
Hmm.
They are all saying the same message, but everyone hears a message differently depending on where they are. And
Yeah.
and you need to, that message might need to be repeated in different ways through different voices, because you never know when you're the voice that someone needed to hear, even if they've heard that message or connected to that message
Right.
in a different way before. Something about your particular, again, flavor is
Mhm.
Hmm.
valuable because someone out there is looking for what you have,
Right.
right? And
That's
you
where I've
never
been
know when
warped
you're going to
in.
run into it.
I've been warped in a way because I've had no choice but to learn and to operate under the assumption that um it's no longer like I don't call myself an artist because it's not really, it is all about budget, like I used to do it because for, and I still do it of course for like my contribution. That's my most important, that's why I do anything. I want to contribute to the medium, you know. But it's when you're not really making stuff, you're just writing the script. It's very like the audience doesn't tell you your work. It's the investor.
Mm-hmm.
They tell you by the amount they don't put in, or if however it goes, they tell you it ain't worth nothing. It doesn't resonate with people. Plus, and I'm only speaking just this is purely for myself, a very specific, thing. Scripts aren't always meant to be read, or they're not really meant to be. Just the way they'll format in general. It's not really going to
it's meant to be a blueprint for what the film looks like, and the film product is what
is supposed to send the message to the people,
right?
Whereas, and I'm okay with that. I don't like being on. I don't like sets. I don't like nothing like that. And writers aren't. You know how it is. They don't want the writer on set. Cool, but I've but it's just I don't know, and it's just I feel like I sound like such a downer, but
no, I totally get that. I mean, well, and creative, like I don't know, even when I collaborate and just being as a writer, I think I'm more open to collaboration because especially with things being so instantly digestible, at least for right now, I've had to come to terms with being like, okay, people don't have the time. They got all these other things to read, right? They don't have the time to like give whatever my piece is going to be 5 or 10 minutes to read, right? Or
right.
That stuff. So I'm more open to collaboration as a writer because if I can pair it with something that's visually striking or prompting,
right.
it makes the impact faster. And you can't always get that just by looking at it. Sometimes you got to read it, all those things. I mean, all that,
yes,
that included. That's just sometimes what it is, I guess, when it comes to, like the art form. I think our definition of art is changing in a way where it's really comes down to how best to elicit or prompt what an emotion, reality, a truth, like all those things, where like AI, right? It's like I feel like the beginning of AI is kind of what we used to think of like portraits, right? So like the idea of artful portrait was like, how close can an artist get this to like photographic quality, right? Before photographs. Okay. How exact and,
realism, right?
Yeah. Realism. Like, how can I make this exact to what I'm seeing? Right. And then art changed into where it's like, it's no longer about just seeing it for what it is. It's about making me feel something.
Yeah. Now let's go inward instead of just focusing on the outward. Right.
And so I think that's all it is now. And so even AI, it's like, okay, how is AI helping either prompt myself into making something or helping me prompt the audience into feeling something?
Right. And the thing is with it being like a tool, it's the first tool in the artist's toolbox where you're not doing all the work.
Right.
And I don't really get down with that. Like out from a writing, but you see, if you are a sculptor, like the guy you had on, and you want to get some design like blueprints, I would 100%. I mean, specifically for writing, I think it's a little weird. Why? Like my buddy the other day was working on a series, and he said it helps him outline and format the his timeline. Yeah. And it's just me. I couldn't help but think like, why though?
Yeah. Because maybe that piece of it is not what he finds joyful, and so that's not where he's meant to add value. And that's what I've said. Like that's what I'm saying. That the pieces of AI, I think, it's not any different than a dishwasher. Why do you have a dishwasher? So you don't have to spend so much time washing the dishes, so you have time to do something else. And the question is, what are you doing with that time? Are you using that time to continue to do other things that aren't necessarily aligned with your highest joy, or are you using that time to find more joy in your life? And for me, it's that use AI to take care of the dishes, right? And maybe for him, the timeline and those aspects of it are the doing the dishes part of his creativity that he doesn't want to do. And so he uses it to facilitate the parts of his creativity that are more enjoyable. And I think that if we can learn to use that tool in that way, that to take some of the effort out of the creation process where you put the best energy into, because the thing that you don't like about your creative process, like for me, if I was doing like we talked about, the script writing is a little bit more technical. That's not really where my passion is. And that's not really what I'm necessarily good at. Right. And so it's the best work that I'm going to do is going to be where I put something out that I'm feeling the best. Like you can't really do good work from a space of I don't really want to do this right now.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it's just something that if you use it as a tool to give you the space to do your best work from the place, to be able to come from the place where you create your best work, that, that is where we need to look at AI.
I think we've been conditioned, like as writers and artists, where to claim our work, we have to produce or have a hand in every single part of it. Like as a writer,
that's always been the case to me. That's always
yeah. Like I wrote every word of that piece came from me. I claim it. I'm a writer. That's my thing. But I have to look at it as like, like a sculptor, like working on a big piece of like marble. And it's like, yeah, I could whittle this entire thing down by hand, but I'm really just gonna like work on this big chunk. So I'm just gonna like blow dynamite until I get to this piece that I'm actually working on.
Right. And I can see it for everything except just for what my personal thing is, because I have such an attack. I've been, and his writing is just, but yeah, sculpture or anything that's visual or anything that you want to get some blueprints. Hell yeah. That's like, because they use AI on construction sites, like cranes, but just for writing has not changed. Like it's still, and it just, I don't think
resistance to it. I feel the same way. It's like
just because it's not a resistance, or it's just I'm not going to do it because I don't know. I know how to do what what I mean. Like that would be I would have to change up the process, right?
That's your creative process. Like for me, so I'm similar. So like so it depends. So like sometimes I read to get ideas. Of course,
you never used it, right? Not to interrupt. You never use AI.
No, not. Yeah, I haven't.
Not to write.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
I fed a couple like ideas to see what it would do with poetry, which it totally sucks. It's still trying to like rhyme shit and do all the same stuff. But that makes sense. Like, so for your creative process, AI might not work. Just like when I want to come up with something new, like, so sometimes, of course, I need to read to get an idea or to motivate myself to an emotion or whatever, right? But when I am trying to create something from scratch, like from new, very novel, I don't want any influence from anywhere because I'm trying to come up with like just originality, right? So I'm just like, okay, whatever I've got, that's where it needs to come. I don't want any influence. I don't want to imitate anything accidentally. And so, for me, it would be hard to have AI like spit stuff back at me because it's like I just don't want it in my creative space right now. Yeah. But other people love the springboard, and that's how they get it. Right. So it just depends on your process.
I can see it being okay with the word springboard. I could see it maybe being like it's still not a real writer's room, but it's it bouncing off an idea as it evolves, as it becomes maybe more of the tool instead of just. But still, man, it's just weird to me the idea of typing like. But I'm old school, man, because Kubrick did the dishes. Bennett Miller did the dishes, right? These guys who I are like. They did the dishes, so I do the dishes, right? In the house that is
writing. My question though is, and maybe just for like the perspective shift a little bit, is there an element in creativity like there is in a lot of things in again human life where we think that if we did not struggle to get somewhere that somehow we are not validated, we are not worthy?
There's a romanticism.
My mind has been industry trained. So this is why, that's exactly right.
So the idea of ease in using AI is a resistant thing to some degree because
I had to suffer, so you do too.
Right. But really,
being a writer, I think I have to be like a degenerate and an addict and like all those things because so many writers like burnt out and like, oh, to be a writer, I just got to like be an asshole and drink all the time.
Right. Like, but do you really have to do that?
No, you don't.
Do you really have to have the struggle? You don't. And so it is. It's that conditioning of honestly. If you didn't try hard, if you didn't struggle, then your story isn't valid. And the truth is that every story is valid. Every perspective is valid. Everything has worth, even if it's not something that is worth or valid to you. It's worthwhile or valid out there to someone. And it does become, I think, a situation of take what resonates, leave what doesn't. Right. If this aligns to you and if it works for you, use it. If it doesn't, ditch it because it's not for you. And it really, I think, is just more of, again, that tool that helps every individual person to see, okay, what is my personal perspective? What is my personal flavor? What is my process? What is the thing that works the best for me?
Right.
And it doesn't have to look the way that anyone else thinks it has to look. It doesn't have to look like anybody else's stuff. It doesn't have to conform to the things that we've been conditioned to believe are the things that are required. It can look completely like whatever works best for you. And it doesn't have to look, no one else has to give you permission to be you.
Well, that kind of, I don't know exactly what time it is, but
sorry, we do want to be respectful of your time. I know we've gone a little bit long, I don't know. It's been great conversation. So
I figured you, because when you had another meeting in progress when I hopped on, so I didn't know what the deal is if you guys are busy. But I wanted to say, because of the way like screenwriting is so isolating, and you work on something and then you are told, like we said, make it cheaper, or you relinquish all creative control, and then I don't want to all I'm going to say is I go back to LA on Tuesday, and then on the 8th, my birthday, I'm meeting with her name is what's the lady's name? I forget. It's the CEO of the LA Performance Arts Center. Natalia. We connected, and we have a meeting on the 8th at 3:00 because I'm doing a little U-turn or left turn into theater because writing plays I've always wanted to, and I know some actors and whatnot, and because I want to take this year, because I've been doing the industry rat race for too long, like this last year, really like knee deep in it, and I want to actually create something. And I want to see the work be delivered, actors going like reading over it and us doing line back and forths and whatnot. And I think that's the right thing for me to do. I feel like I've earned it.
Yeah.
You understand? Because of how in a film, like everything is just budget. And whereas these actors are really
they are there for the work, they're there for the piece, they're there to help you tell the story.
And this guy, his name's Ray, he is there's some financial, we have funding a little bit, which is very nice, and that's like the divine way of telling me, I think, go for it, dude. Just because it needs to be done, and also like the isolation that a job like this provides, like you can get out there and it's just so I think maybe my mind will change after I shake some of and a lot of the industry stuff you'll hear anybody talk about, like that you fight through, is unanswered, like emails or answered emails that what I call false starts. That's what it drives you nuts, man. And everybody deals with them in all aspects of life, but just on the topic of with AI and whatnot, I feel like I don't know, but yeah, you're right, because because time changes, and just because you have the old school way of you got to suffer because they did and now you do, I hope you can understand why it does make me a bit uncomfortable. I hope I don't sound
I understand where you're coming from. Again, that idea of,
and I mean for writing solely, anything else I don't care about, because I don't do that,
I don't
so I can only speak from, not that I don't care about, but I don't care about whatever process makes you do what you want to do artistically.
And I don't like it too, because it's like, growing up, like still in the minority of people that like to write. Like, I mean, you go up in school and it's math and English that everybody either like hates or is okay, or loves, really. And I was one of the people that loved English. I was one of the people that loved to write and read and get my stuff out. And so for the majority of my life, like I've been proud of being proficient, there may be other people at writing or communicating in that way. And then something comes along and it makes me feel like my skill is less, prestigious or less, valuable in that way. And it sucks. And I have to get over that.
Yeah.
And, that that feeling.
This is not like therapy. This is not like a thing, like a healing thing for us. Like this is identity. This is my identity. This is my identity, and this is like who I am. It's my confidence.
Here's what I'll say though.
I don't dip my. What did Ty West say? If you're gonna get wet, may as well swim, right?
Yeah.
That's a common expression. I heard it from him when I was like 9.
I love that, but I do think that, again, and I think this ties into the social media aspect of things, that there's a certain element of, do you take away from social media and all this kind of conversation that you don't need to be validated by the external world in order to be valid, right? That we are still conditioned and we're still looking for that. How does my work get seen? How do I get an audience? When the truth is, you creating because it comes from you, right? And just putting it out there, that's enough. You did a thing, you made a thing, you created, you know, whatever your process was and however you did it.
I like the critics. I like
whether anyone sees it or not, what you did is valid. And I think if we can all kind of learn to love what we do and what we've done. And I'm not trying to say that like anyone has a wrong perspective. I don't want you to get that idea. I just
this is the most uncomfortable chair I've ever sat in, is all.
Oh, don't worry. I'm a wiggle worm too over here. Don't even worry about it.
This thing has been falling apart and it just like hurts. But
it's all right. We're manifesting a beautiful podcast studio that we can all meet in.
I'm manifesting a chair.
Yeah, like it's gonna be great. Cushy chairs, awesome mics, very nice backdrops. Thank you, universe, in advance.
Yeah.
But I do think that some of it is that as artists, we do need to let go of the conditioning from society and certainly from the culture in which we've grown up in America, that and the social media aspect that says, if you don't get a certain amount of likes, it's not valid. If you don't get a certain amount of attention, it's not valid. Everything that you
farther than what they have been, for sure.
Right.
But the identity crisis, like he said, it's like just the thought of it, the thought of trying to move away from critic approval. Yeah. It doesn't, it actually, not that it scares me. It just doesn't register, only because this is what I've always done. And I can't really, like I do it because critics are like, it's cool.
The part of
the game, right? It's the dance like of this, that all of Kubrick did and all of them did.
I think of it as it's the harmony of nature, right? Like a squirrel is a squirrel and does squirrel things. You are a writer, you write, we do writer things. Yeah. You have to do it because it is your identity, it is who you are. Yep. And that, I think, is where you're seeing that chart like you were talking about before of happiness quotient and how things have gone down. It's because people are, I think, starting to recognize what you are called to do creatively. That's who you are. That's who you are meant to be. That's your place in the ecosystem of humanity. And when you're not doing the thing that is who you are and following your identity, it's very uncomfortable. It's very painful. It's very unfulfilling.
Does it trigger like our imposter syndrome, like even more so? Yeah, it does. And it will. And that's just
right. And I always think, man, every morning I think how blessed I am to have gotten the call, so to speak, when I was 7 years old. That like to the point where I never once, like, it was never like, am I going to do this? Like graduating high school, am I going to go into this career? Am I going to, because, like film, not graduating high school, I did that. I wanted that. But I always just knew like, well, I'm going to go into that. Like, because of how since I was 7 years old, and so it's just like, I don't know. There's just one way of doing it. Like,
I think that is something that I appreciate you saying that. I have always been a creative person. I've always been someone I write and, dream up.
I don't do nothing else but write in terms of creativity. Like, everyone like a jack of all trades. I wish I had something.
I'm the jack of all trades that I can't not do different things.
I can't. Yeah. I wish I could paint, draw, or I can't do anything.
And I don't necessarily, again, have classical drawing skills. My art is very abstract, and I've done things like, but that's just it.
Figure. I'm not classically trained or anything.
No, that's exactly. Yeah.
This is Delilah. You can see her hair.
Yeah.
Dude, I mean, and whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I just classically trained is whatever works, man. Like Ben dropped out of college, and Cooper dropped out of high school. Tarantino is a name you hear kind of a lot, but he dropped out of high school. And like film school is not, for me at least, like film school, if you want to go for the equipment, play around with it, I get it. But I always just wanted to write it, man. So
even you just saying that and just like knowing how big those names are and having just the urge and the hunger to want to be big and write something good or whatever else. Like even you just saying those facts, I have to watch myself because I'm just like, man, I should have dropped out of high school. Then I'd be awesome. Or like then I would
damn,
be
why did I drop out of ninth
right.
grade?
But it's that same
Like,
like romantic where it's like, oh man, if only I would have like had a really shitty life, like I
right,
would have been
yeah.
better. That's
God,
not
yeah, if
how it
only I
has to
would
be.
have like Polanski, if only my parents would have escaped the Holocaust and brought me
Yeah,
over
right.
to America.
Yeah. If only I would have
But
been more
no,
sexually
I was only
abused.
saying that
Like,
on the
Yeah.
back of her classically trained comment,
yeah.
you know, because it's I don't there's no one way to anything. But what I wanted,
Right. But that's what I
sometimes-
appreciate. That's what I appreciate though about what you're saying is really and truly we can consider ourselves blessed because we
Yeah.
know who we are enough to know that this is what we want to do. The creative life, the writing.
Yeah.
Not everyone knows what they want to do in life. Not everyone knows that thing that creates a spark in their soul. Not everyone does.
90% don't, honestly.
And so even
Yeah.
to think of, and this is definitely a message that I know I need because I become very frustrated all the time with like, why am I not just podcast editing and producing all the time and having to work a day job because it gets in the way, right? But really and truly, how blessed am I that, and I don't say that in a religious way, I'm certainly not a religious person, but it is a beautiful thing that I can know myself well enough to know that this is the thing that lights me up that I want to do, right?
Yeah.
And just to find the gratitude in that,
Right. I think the most beautiful thing for me is just the fact that like these guys exist like the I could go on for the names I could name, man. Like Scorsese and Fincher or all these guys who just there are or anybody, whoever it is, like they exist and their art is like here to consume. That's like that's why, if somebody is an artist and they see, and if you're a filmmaker or screenwriter and you see all of these things that these people have done and you don't want to contribute to it somehow, then let me say it differently. You need like the contribution is key, man. Like that's because it's like passing on the baton, I just love it. I love everything I ever will do, have done, any achievement, anything is owed to them.
Yeah.
I just wanted to really, as if this was like, if I had to make one statement, if I get plane crash tomorrow, when I go back to LA, I want that to be my legacy. That it's
if I could compliment the world, that's like, biggest thing. I feel like as artists, like we just want to compliment the world.
I want to compliment the culture.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I know, Shane, you said a lot of times too. How do I add value? Right.
Yeah, how do I add value? Yeah.
And that, I think that is a very big part of why we do what we do. Like, how do I inject some of this, whatever this energy is that I feel is so exciting and useful or interesting or fascinating to me, right? How do I put that out into the world in a way that someone else can latch onto, not even for the sake of me being able to pay my bills with it, but for the sake of you had that inspiration, you had those forebears who showed you who you are, who showed you what you want. How can I be that for someone else?
And contribute to such
how can I make them proud? How can I make the ones before me and then inspire the next?
Yeah, and contribute to such a great. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I want to hear it. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just gonna say that like contribute is such a good word. I mean, just for the sake that it has the word tribute in it, because it's just like that's what it is. Like that's totally, in one word.
That's what it's all about, contribute. Man. I like to the ending of Moonwalk is literally the ending to No Country for Old Men, but there's a spin on it. The last line is basically, and that's homage. It's not because it's its own thing, but like how many. And like in Wicked Cycles, the first thing I ever put out, there's the homage to The Shining with the swinging of the bat. And that's not like, you can tell when someone's ripping off, right? But like it's these little like tilts of the hat.
A respectful nod to the
know that
the inspirations you received. And here's the thing that I really think is great about that. I love it when I see an homage, a callback, a hint to something else, right? And I think the brilliant thing in that when you are able to pay tribute, not in this, I know what you say, make them proud. You're not saying in the sense of like looking for validation for yourself, but
that too.
Well, yeah, but that
I know, but
when someone catches on and sees, or sees some, and someone says, "Oh, that's an homage to whatever." Well, then that person, someone might go down the rabbit hole of, well, where does that come from? I don't know about that, and might find even more inspiration and find inspiration where you did, right? And then they can look at what you've done and say, okay, they were inspired, they did this, and then look at what they created. That's just a tiny little nod that you added in there to your writing, but look at the rest of the work that you did. Look at the rest of what you did create. And it's sort of putting yourself out there in a way where you do hope that you do inspire someone again to follow their passion, to follow their identity, and to be able to create and add value in their own way so that it exponentially builds, right?
Right. And just to because it's not a hedonistic job. It's not a very in terms of the external factors maybe, but on the page and on the contribution has to be egoless. It really and honestly does. It cannot be about you in terms of what, and y'all know this, in terms of what you create. Now, what comes with it, the outside and whatever may be accolades or money for any job, it's got to be egoless. You agree, right? Or am I?
Yeah.
There can't be any self. It's just got to be the page.
No, it is. It's creating the thing for the sake of the thing itself.
Because people can tell, once movies have if you have a message, that's great. But when it feels preachy, when it's obvious, and it almost is like talking down to you, it's like, what? I don't understand it.
And that's not a message that people can receive well, right?
Yeah, because they don't being told nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you, right. No, I'm with you 100%. Yeah. Don't preach at me and tell me, let me make up my own mind kind of thing. And
or let me just.
But that's what I do enjoy. Just so I try to wrap this up a little bit for you. Again, want to be respectful of your time, but
no, it's okay.
I do like that about the way that your, again, sort of flavor with Moonwalked, that it is not to be taking sides, not to be saying this is what it was, but to present the information, present the picture of it, and allow the audience to decide for themselves, allow them to take in that information and make their own determination. Because really, at the end of the day, that's what everyone's going to do anyway, regardless.
Yeah. Right. And I'll end it, or just, the scene and is all ambiguous. It's kind of up for what you want to decide. But the subtext is all grounded by the ugly truth of this country, which is, or of I guess,
I think
it's really wealth, it's greed, it's excess, it's exploitation, it's what happens when you achieve the American dream. You can be whatever, you can have it all, you can do it all. What happens when you get that? It never ends well, so that's what I wanted to kind of, and I think that's a nice place for me to kind of, I just need a cigarette. So.
No, that's all right. Well, so I do want to let you go ahead and plug any other things that you might have coming up. Let people know where they can find you. We'll definitely share your information in the description links below, but let folks know where they can find you and find your work.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't, it's, again, it's not like I can promote I don't have an artistic page or whatever, but it's because it's PDFs and whatnot. I have a IMDb you can look at. I have a Instagram. I don't really do links. You connect with me. You email me. Talk to my manager. No, I'm just kidding.
Let my manager do it. Okay.
No, but it's if you would like to read it, and my Instagram is, well, if you can just
I'll share it. Yep. Share all the links you want to share. We'll put them in the links below. And
I feel I'm privileged to not have to be totally active on social media. The way that everyone's got to be kind of, whereas with poetry, you don't really have to do it.
Not having to sell yourself.
Yeah.
On that, I don't have to. I just share it because it's, I don't really do much else. But so that's cool.
Awesome. Well, we do want to thank you so much for joining us. Really, this has been such a great conversation. Really have enjoyed it.
Yeah,
it was very nice talking to you. Would love to have you back to check in on what you're, once you're going into that theater world, to have an update.
Yeah, for sure. And I would like to. Yeah, I want to hear about the both of y'all just email me some stuff.
Sure.
Absolutely. Would love to.
And honestly, if I can ask one thing from y'all, it's been such a pleasure, and it's a really nice experience for me. If Shane, I know you've already seen it, but if you would watch Foxcatcher, and please let me know what you think.
Yeah.
So
And
And then
Godfather.
if you,
Oh, Godfather, I'm familiar with.
Okay,
Yes,
very good.
Godfather, I got.
Foxcatcher is my
Yeah,
Godfather.
that's
You know, it's like
I love
my.
it.
And then if you watch it, and then someday if you read Moonwalked, hopefully you can see what I was trying to do there. So besides that, yeah, thank you for having me, and I'll talk to you soon. I guess I don't know how to end this.
Yeah, definitely.
No, we so appreciate you coming. Really, no, is it? Yes, we'll have our agents call your agent, and we'll all get drinks. It'll be great. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate you being here.
All right, thanks, girl. I'll see you around.
Yeah, sounds good.
Hi again, friends. That was our conversation with Michael Beard. I do hope you enjoyed it. Shane and I really did have a blast talking to him about writing, and do check out the links below if you'd like more information about Michael and what he's working on. If you'd like to support more episodes of the No Small Stories podcast, you can join our Patreon. That's patreon.com/No Small Stories. Do follow us on Instagram at No Small Stories Podcast. And like, share, comment, subscribe, leave a review, do all those wonderful things that you viewers and listeners can do. Until next time, thanks so much again for tuning in. And wherever you are out there, friends, we hope you're doing well.